Well, firstly, we can be very clear that we stand with Israel. That's why the Foreign Secretary was in Israel yesterday, being clear in our unequivocal support of Israel's right to defend themselves from these most appalling terrorist atrocities that they've faced. Of course, civilian casualties need to be minimised, and that's what the Foreign Secretary was clear about yesterday. But it is the case that Israel needs to be able to defend itself from these attacks, to rescue the hostages that have been taken and to deter future attacks of the sort that we've seen.
The current state of affairs is that there are 2 million people living in Gaza. As you know, there's no food, no fuel, no medicines allowed in. There could be 2 million people, not all of them terrorists, who are going to starve to death unless aid is allowed in. Should there be humanitarian corridors, and should aid be sent to Gaza?
Well, the UK is one of the biggest aid donors. Of course, in terms of Gaza, we channel that aid through the United Nations. We give about 10% of the aid. Our aid budget last year was £13 billion. So the UK has a proud record in terms of aid. But Israel has to be able to defend itself from these terrorist atrocities. And we also need to recognise that there are hostages currently in Gaza that have been taken from Israel, and Israel needs to be able to respond to that.
But the problem is, as you will be well aware, and I know you're sort of towing the line, if you like, and not wanting to say anything which is sort of going against what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying. But the problem is, the more you allow civilians in Gaza to suffer, as civilians in Israel have suffered in a different way, the more we perpetuate the problem with terrorist organisations, don't we?
Well, it's Hamas that is putting the civilian population at risk. It's Hamas that is co-locating its military operations in civilian areas. It's Hamas that has launched the terrorist attacks on Israel, and it's Hamas that has taken hostages back into Gaza. So responsibility sits with the terrorist organisation Hamas for what is happening. And it's right that Israel is able to defend itself from the most appalling attacks that it is faced. But alongside that, the UK has a proud record in terms of its overseas aid. We are major donors, 10% of the aid through the United Nations. And the Foreign Secretary is in Israel discussing these issues as we stand with them in the face of the catastrophic events that they've faced.
We just touched there on James Cleverly, who is in Israel at the moment. We actually saw him running from an air raid siren last night. What is being done to protect British people on the ground in Israel, and those as well who hold dual citizenship?
Well, there are a large number of people that do hold dual citizenship, and that is why the Foreign Secretary was in Israel discussing these issues. Of course, it is a fast-moving situation, and that's why I urge anyone concerned about these issues to follow the advice on the Foreign Office website. That is updated regularly because obviously events are moving at pace. There are still commercial flights in terms of from Israel, but these are issues that the Foreign Secretary was there discussing with our counterparts in the Israeli government.
What do we do? What are we doing about the situation here in the UK, where, of course, as we've seen a number of incidences, tensions are very high amongst both the Israeli and the Palestinian communities here?
Well, the Home Secretary has been very clear in terms of her contact both with the Jewish community, of our absolute commitment to defend them and to stand with them, but also very clear with chief constables in terms of ensuring that the law is enforced. We have a proud tradition in terms of people's right to protest within the United Kingdom, but that does not mean putting other communities in fear, or does not mean some of the vandalism or other crimes that we've seen. So patrols have been increased. The Home Secretary has been in very close contact with Jewish groups, with chief constables, to ensure that everything is done to protect those communities, because we recognise there's huge concern, there's huge fear, there's huge alarm within our Jewish community, and that's why the Home Secretary has been in close contact with the police to ensure everything is done to put additional protection in place.
Many of the papers this morning are reporting that there are 360,000 Israeli troops on the border with Gaza ready to cross into Gaza early next week. If there is a ground offensive, will we be supporting Israel with weaponry?
We stand with Israel and we're fully supportive of them, and the Foreign Secretary is in Israel discussing that support. So we're very clear in our stance, our full, unequivocal support for Israel and its right to defend itself.